Today on Forum TV, we'll be talking to the leader of Ontario PC Party, Patrick Brown, and an MPP for Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke, John Yakabuski. Gentlemen, thank you very much for making time in your busy schedules. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure to be here.
Happy to talk to you.
Patrick, you were elected as the leader of Ontario PC just over a year ago. Since then, you've held a successful convention in February. So what has changed under your leadership? You have new initiatives, you have a new logo. What does that mean to Ontarians?
Well, we're aspiring to be a more modern, inclusive, pragmatic, progressive Conservative party, and that means we don't simply vote against the Liberals or NDP if they put forward a bill. If it makes sense for Ontario, if it's in the best interest of Ontario, we'll support the bill, we'll support the effort no matter where that idea originates. There's no monopoly on a good idea. It also means that we don't run away from issues, whether it's the environment or healthcare or education, topics we might not have talked a lot about before, we're talking passionately about now. We're excited by the challenge that lies ahead.
Last year, you've held an event at Queen's Park for the members of the Ukrainian-Canadian community, and we have discussed, the potential for Ontario and Ukraine cooperation on mining, IT, and many other spheres.
Yeah, I really want to see Ontario active with Ukraine for a number of reasons. One, I think Canada and Ontario has a proud history with Ukraine, and we want to be that good friend. But also from economic development perspectives, I think there's a lot of opportunities for Ontario where others might not be on the ground. I think there's an opportunity for Ontario to be on the ground, encouraging that trade. And I think in Ukraine there's also a soft spot for Canada. We have a proud story to tell. Prime Minister Brian Mulroney was one of the first leaders to recognize an independent Ukraine. If you look at former Prime Minister Stephen Harper's strong support of Ukraine against the Russian aggression. And, whether it's great public servants like Yuri Simko, we have had a proud Ukrainian heritage in our party, and it just seems natural for us to continue to work with our friends in Ukraine.
John, you have also organized several events for the Canadian-Ukrainian community here at Queen's Park. Do you believe that Ukrainians in Ontario share conservative values?
I was honored when Patrick appointed me as the culture liaison for the Ukrainian community. And it's been a tremendous experience for me because I've learned an awful lot about the Ukrainian community that I didn't know before. And I appreciate those opportunities. And I think it's important that every cultural community has a conduit to the PC caucus, which is something that I know is very important to our leader, that every community has that conduit. And I've been really proud to serve as that conduit with the Ukrainian community. There's no question that we share an awful lot of like values, Ukrainians and us in Ontario. Family values, hard work, fiscally responsible. We've learned all of those things, and we've been able to talk about all of those things at many of the meetings that we've held. And it's been a tremendous experience for me, and I hope I presume it will continue for some time, and I hope that in many ways it's been rewarding for the Ukrainian community as well.
What are the top 3 priorities of Ontario PC under the leadership of Patrick Brown?
Creating jobs is always going to be the number one priority, making Ontario prosperous. And to make Ontario prosperous, you need jobs. We've bled jobs under the government of Kathleen Wynne and Dalton McGuinty. And if we want to have the money to invest in healthcare and education and the environment, we can't continue to see jobs leave Ontario. And so having a strong economy and having economic growth is the number one issue. Having said that, if you're talking about the issues that I hear the most about in Ontario, the healthcare system, energy prices, those would also be on the top of the list. The way the government has given away hydro because of their mismanagement scandal, these ridiculous contracts where they sign for renewable energy for power that we don't need, we actually have to give to our competitors. So the Kathleen Wynne scandal over energy prices is a top issue for us, and also the cuts to the healthcare system. The mismanagement have now resulted in $800 million being taken away from physicians, 1,400 nurses being laid off, and because of the severe cuts by Eric Hoskins and Kathleen Wynne to our hospitals, it tends to be an issue that's brought up a lot.
John, and what are the 3 hot topics right now in the legislature? I know your party is a big advocate, and Patrick, of autism and support for those families who have family members who have autism. So what are those 3 big issues that you're currently discussing in the legislature?
Well, autism is certainly a big one. The hospital cuts and energy prices. Those are the big three that, as Patrick said, those are the big three that we've been discussing in the last couple of weeks, almost on a daily basis here in the legislature, and how the government has failed to handle those three issues, broken their word to the people of Ontario, particularly on the autism issue. And then if you look at the hospital, the cuts situation, almost every member in the legislature is experiencing a situation in their own ridings where there's cuts to healthcare in hospitals in their riding. And that's something that the leader and other members of caucus have been bringing up quite regularly. And myself, I fortunately happen to be the energy critic as well, so I get to deal with the energy issues on a regular basis. And you go home to your ridings, and it's one of the top complaints that people have every day is how we're destroying this economy by pricing energy out of reach of so many businesses and families.
That issue sort of bleeds into Liberal donation scandal, where Liberals appeared to be using government policy for the purpose of fundraising, creating a system where you have to pay to play. And I think John did a phenomenal job at highlighting, everyone was saying, why would you sign these wind contracts for energy you don't need that you have to give away? And John pointed out through his research that 99% of the companies that got grants, the wind companies that got contracts, also donated to the Liberal Party. And it really shows that line that had been passed.
Gentlemen, this question is for both of you. And now we're returning back to the Ontario-Ukraine issues. The Ukrainian-Canadian community in Ontario and throughout Canada has been working really hard to make sure that the memory of millions of Ukrainians who died during a horrific genocide, the Holodomor, is present, and that we commemorate those innocent victims. Currently, the community is working on building a place of commemoration for those victims, somewhere in a prominent location in Toronto.
So I've already agreed to support the community on that effort. I think it's important to educate future generations on the Holodomor, some of the greatest tragedies in humanity. You can't sweep under the carpet. You have to remember. You have to honor the victims. Remember the injustice that occurred, and a monument is a great way to pass on that story, pass on that education. I know we have the Holodomor bus that has been going and visiting schools. I'd love it to be taught in a more robust fashion in the curriculum too. There are opportunities to do a better job at teaching history, teaching the history of Canada's peoples. And with such a dynamic and significant Ukrainian population, I think we could do a better job at acknowledging some of those horrific events.
The reality in this world is there's a lot of things taking people's attention. So the erection of a memorial would forever implant in our society a commemoration of those who lost their lives in this genocide. I think it's very important that future generations not be insulated from some of the horrific crimes that took place long before they were born. And I think a memorial would do that in a most justifiable way.
Now, to a brighter event in the life of Ukrainian Canadians this year, you might know that we're celebrating 125th anniversary of our settlement here in Canada. Celebratory events are already held across Canada. There will be more festivities here in Toronto and in Ottawa and across Ontario. I sincerely hope to see you there, and it'll be a great gesture of support, I think.
Absolutely. I look forward to celebrating that milestone. I've been going to so many Ukrainian events. I think I'm becoming Ukrainian by osmosis. And a lot of people have been helping me within this political process. Obviously, Wayne Gretzky endorsed me during the leadership campaign and has been a great friend. Dale Howardchuk traveled throughout Northern Ontario with me not once but twice, introducing me at events. And people like Peter Przansky, smart lawyer in Toronto, and Boris Horodinsky, one of the most successful onion farmers in Canada, have been great supporters on my campaign to get Ontario back on track.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for agreeing to be interviewed by Forum TV. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having us. This was a real treat.
Real pleasure. Love to do it again.
Today, Forum TV interviewed the leader of Ontario PC, Patrick Brown, and MPP, John Yakabuski.